Good afternoon and welcome to the Eclectic Radical. As always, I'm Chris Richards, the Eclectic Radical, and joining me today is Jamarr Jabari, the host of Unsavory Politik X on X, formerly known as Twitter, where I used to stream until they started wanting to charge me for it. How are you? How are you doing, Jabari? I'm sorry, Jamarr.
Yeah, Jamarr Jabari is fine with it, whichever one. I'm good. Yeah, that whole trying to pay for streaming is so stupid when you can literally go live anywhere else.
I mean, it is funny, especially. I know what they want to do. He wants. So there's this thing that's going on, and if you read tech reporters, they call it AI. People, you can tell that they call it AI, but what it actually is automated incompetence of certain kinds of creative labor, and they'd rather
Okay.
push out cheap slop automated by an algorithm than actually pay someone to do good work. And they would actually prefer the slop to the good work if they both have the same effect on advertising or clicks or what have you.
Right.
So it's tough for us as a result.
Yeah. Yeah, especially how X is not really left friendly at all, really.
It's really not. And of course, Elon is trying to squeeze money out of the platform because of all the money he dumped into the platform when he bought it.
Right.
So he's trying to squeeze his investment back. He doesn't really have a choice. He's getting pressure to make money in ways that Mark Zuckerberg isn't, because he didn't just buy it himself the way Elon did.
Right.
And he seems to have gotten into this thing ever since Substack Notes launched, where he's in a cutthroat competition with Substack, which is why Substack links get deprivileged on Twitter and why people's content from other platforms seems like it's shadow banned. He wants us all paying for Twitter so that we're all doing everything on Twitter, and then we'll get the most attention because everything we do is benefiting him.
Yeah. Yeah, so you know what? Screw Elon. Screw you. Like, I like the idea of you saying that you wanted this thing to be a town hall and all that stuff like that, but it's not. You're a hypocrite, just like your previous owners were.
Yep.
But what's funny is that he's now on the radar. I heard Victoria Nuland, the disgraced, the modern day genocider, colonizer, whatever people want to call her these days. She wants him investigated.
Of course, because he did that thing which is breach of contract, and you don't like the fact that someone has this much power, regardless of your opinion on the Russia-Ukraine war. He did that thing where he unilaterally and without warning disconnected the Ukrainian military from Starlink for X amount of time. Which, it's his corporation. I suppose he can do that. But the fact that's what happens, though, when a billionaire runs what used to be two competing satellite internet companies and as one monopoly.
Right. It's definitely a screw you to the establishment, because they have been trying so hard to control the narrative in every single way they can in social media.
But he is the establishment in the end, because what is all this? What's he doing? He's supporting Trump. He's supporting Israel. He's supporting the status quo in every way. Because it's the status quo that made him a billionaire, right?
Right.
And changing the status quo might lead to people wanting to do something about billionaires.
Yeah.
That's always a risk for billionaires.
Yep. They don't want to be overthrown.
So
nobody wants to be overthrown.
Talk about your show. When I was on your show, we were mostly just talking about politics, but tell my audience about your show.
Yeah. So I have a string of shows that's all under Jabari Vok Media, which started originally just with Jabari Vok Podcast. And on in the Jamarr Jabari podcast, I would say it's just like a free for all, where I have a guest on, and it could be any guest that that I am interested in. It could be any. I have had lawyers. I've had Green Party candidates on, PSL members on. I've had I think one Democrat. I've had a lot of musicians on, because I'm a musician as well too. I've had a lot of artists on and stuff like that. And so I wanted to isolate, because I realized that a lot of my content with Jabari Vok podcast was a lot of like interviewing and a lot of getting to know the guests.
Yeah.
And I wanted to distinguish it with being very political.
Yeah.
Which there still is political elements within Jabari Vok podcast, but I wanted to make a show that was strictly political, where it's not political, where you're getting these pundits on and these politicians on that's just going to lie to you and say these dumb things. I wanted to get people on Unsavory Politics so we can have more of an educational conversation of the issue that we're discussing, on why this is an issue, why this is happening, who is being marginalized, who's being oppressed. That's the difference between being an activist and being a politician. Some people conflate the two. Politicians are down to sign a bill to murder you. Activists are down to stop you from being murdered and stop you from being marginalized and oppressed.
And how has this politician-led activism model that focuses on elections really been working for us as far as winning our freedom and all that jazz?
Oh God, we live in the belly of the beast. The two-party system is very, very pissed off. They realize that they cannot have the power no more. It's crazy. If I was a normal liberal, I would be very, very upset seeing that Kamala Harris is now 49% neck and neck on majority of the polls with Trump, and Trump is leading in like all these battle states. But I know, for instance, the Democrats, they just fell. They dropped the ball on the trust of the people, which is why we're living in a.
I was a normal liberal once. I'm old. I admit it. I admit I was a normal liberal once. When I was a normal liberal, I thought Dick Cheney was the devil. Normal liberals made jokes about Dick Cheney being Darth Vader. Yeah. I mean, this was literally a common topic on comedy shows where liberal comedians were comparing to Dick Cheney to Darth Vader, on a weekly basis, because of his combination of health issues, but never actually dying, and intense evil.
Right.
And so we were calling Dick Cheney Darth Vader, and now Kamala Harris, who's supposed to be unleashing the force, if we're supposed to believe the Democrats, Kamala Harris has been endorsed by Darth Vader. And not like throwing the emperor, not throwing the emperor in the pit, Darth Vader either, but like we still need to kill all the Ewoks, Darth Vader.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it interesting, like how Dick Cheney and a Bush can just be rehabilitated in a supposed wannabe liberal space that's supposed to be left?
Well, this is
why I don't consider liberals left.
That stupid
I
scene.
consider them more like moderates.
That stupid scene at Poppy Bush's funeral, where he and Michelle, where W and Michelle Obama were sharing the mints. That was just so, they did that on purpose on the news just to make people like Bush again, because everybody likes Michelle Obama. So they push them together like, oh, they're friends. Well, we like Michelle Obama, and if Michelle Obama likes him, he can't be all that bad. And they're so
be all that bad, even though 1 million people are dead.
Yeah, and it's like nobody worries about the 1 million dead Iraqis that were the reason we said he and Dick Cheney were the devil in the first place.
Right. It's absolutely insane.
And the thing that I still am amazed by, and I'm amazed that people aren't talking about this news more,
Right.
because this guy was on liberal media all the time while Trump was president, talking about how Trump was so terrible for American foreign policy. So there's this guy in the Biden White House named Brett McGurk, who was who's in the Biden White House because he was one of Obama's advisors. But before that, he was the director for White House operations for Iraq and Afghanistan for W. Bush. And he is the guy who's been pushing for open-ended, unlimited support for Netanyahu in Palestine and Lebanon. And it's like, okay, so this guy who was coming on TV to tell us how bad Trump was for national security, who would destabilize the world and start wars, he's been pushing this whole genocide in the Middle East since he got power back.
Yep. It's just so funny how they align when it comes to foreign policy.
Well, I just remember now. This is where you knew they were going to align eventually, because Barack Obama ran on the idea of we should hold them accountable for the Iraq War.
Right. He did.
He did.
I remember
He ran on this. He ran explicitly on this, and then he's like, "Well, we need to move forward." But in between running on holding people accountable for the Iraq War and we need to move forward, he made Joe Biden his running mate. Now, one of the things that was coming out left and right while Obama was president was that people like Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi had been like super hip deep in all this lying us into the Iraq War right there with the Republicans and the Bush administration, cooperating, being collaborators with the Republicans who were illegally pushing us into a war that Democrats would later run for president against. So when Joe Biden becomes Barack Obama's running mate, and then Barack Obama wins and starts talking starts talking behind closed doors about prosecuting people, you got to imagine that that's the moment where Joe Biden says, "Now, just wait a moment, Jack. If you prosecute people for this Iraq war stuff, me and Hillary and Nancy Pelosi, we're going to go to prison too. And how's that going to look for your administration?"
Yeah. He definitely dropped the ball there.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been like, I don't give a fuck. You going to jail. Your grandparents, they involved? They might go to jail too. Who else is involved with this? This is what I'm saying. And this is why, I think it's important. Because I had a conversation with a friend who was pro-Israeli. I don't want to mention their name. And I like to think that they changed the tune now, but I try to explain to them, I'm like, whenever you think that, the right way to do this is to respond with just like, okay, this is the enemy, we need to go in and kill the enemy. You are already lost your morality, already lost it. And you live in a country that has done it multiple times. In Vietnam, what did we do? We killed 1 million people. In the Middle East, what did we do? We killed 1 million people. Did that solve anything?
In North Korea, what did we do? We killed like 3 million people.
To kill like 3 million people in North Korea. Why do you think they got nukes now? Why do you think they keep reminding you that they are nuclear power?
The reason they want to be the reason they want to have modern weapons is because Americans have killed them before, and every time they do something that America doesn't like, what basically all these conversations break down to is America threatening to kill them again if they don't get back in the line. And they want to have the nukes.
That's the other thing.
So that America can't do that anymore.
So you see these examples, and now you see Israel. Every time it's crazy. Every time when people ask Israeli officials, why y'all keep doing this? They always go back to, oh, well, the Europeans got away with it. The Americans got away with it. Why can't we do it? We should be able to do the same thing that they did. But international law, no. International law did not affect us. So why should it affect them? That's how they're thinking. They're like, y'all didn't get in trouble with international law.
Well, yeah, so no, the U.S. still ignores international law whenever we want.
Right.
That's what Obama covering up for torture was all about. Let's ignore that whole international law.
Right. And you see Obama, I think Obama is a huge example of Harris is going to be.
Yeah.
After he let them slide, what did he do? He led in drone striking children. So he became a war criminal himself.
There's a big difference, though, between Obama and Harris, in that while Obama was always sort of an establishment activist who was trying to elect a certain kind of Democrat, Obama was still somebody who was organizing in communities and closer to the people and still initially trying to run on these populist ideas. And while up to a point, I think, if he weren't always an opportunist and a little bit of an op, then he wouldn't have been willing to be sidetracked in the first place. But I think everybody makes the promises thinking, well, I'll do a little progressive thing. And after I do that little progressive thing, I'll do this little imperial thing here and everybody will be happy and we'll just go on and it'll be good. And that little progressive thing never happens or ends up being disappointing. And the little imperial thing ends up being a big deal that kills a bunch of people.
7 wars.
And
he also told Trump that North Korea was a threat before he left office.
I really think Obama had this idea. Some of the Republicans are going to want to give their people health care if I don't prosecute them for torture. And that ended up not being right.
I don't know. We got 2 more days of everybody just freaking out. And I know I sound insensitive of that, but I'm really just sick and tired of the lesser two evil thing.
Well,
I'm really
I have a feeling about elections. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, you're fine.
I have a feeling about electoral politics that's basically, in order to win a liberal election, you have to make all sorts of pandering compromises to like the most undemocratic elements in the country.
Right.
In order to have a chance to win. So participating in the election with the intention of winning the election is almost like a total surrender of all values anyway. Because the only way you could actually win is to somehow pander to the right wing of capital enough to get them to support your movement. And they would want you to give up all your principles, even if they let you do that one little progressive thing, which they haven't for a good while now. The last time that one little progressive thing happened was when we got what was supposed to be universal health care, but it ended up being planned by the Heritage Foundation.
Yeah, Obamacare, right?
Yeah, Obamacare. And why would the Democrats oppose the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 when they gave us the Heritage Foundation's Massachusetts healthcare plan?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. I never even thought of it that way, but that's a good thing to think about.
And the thing with Butch Ware and abortion and trans people and trans rights, that's bad. I have to admit, that's bad. But I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say that if you've got someone like Kamala Harris, who is not at all bothered by genocide, then I have to be skeptical of her commitment to abortion rights or trans rights, because she doesn't really care about the basic human right of the right to live and not be wiped out.
Right.
So if she's willing to do the genocide thing, then why would she really protect anybody in any sort of oppressed category here?
Well, you see, I've said that, and then I got rebuked.
Oh, of course. And then the other side of it is, okay, and then you got Butch Ware. Butch Ware said some things about trans people and about abortion I don't like. and I don't agree with. But he's against a genocide and sees the whole basic humanity of people in the first place.
Right.
I feel like if he's genuinely against a genocide for the right reasons and genuinely has the right idea about humanity, then he's more, there's more chance to move him on the trans rights and abortion rights than there is to move any liberal Democrat on the support for Israel.
Right. No, I totally agree. And Jill Stein is his running mate.
Jill Stein, who's the presidential candidate, is really good on both issues.
Really, yeah. So it's like he can be moved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But people
obviously
are buying into too much propaganda with the Greens.
Yeah.
Way too much propaganda with the Greens.
Obviously,
they need to win 5%. They have to win 5% of the vote.
And
it has to happen.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, you know that there's going to be a big break unless, and this is the only thing that can possibly ruin it, unless Cornel West surprises everybody, and even then it's going to hurt Kamala Harris. So it's not like it's going to help Kamala Harris any. But pretty much the only thing that could stop Jill Stein from winning Michigan is for Cornel West to win Michigan, because he's the only person in competition for Michigan with Jill Stein. Kamala Harris is way behind both of them, and Donald Trump is way behind Kamala Harris. So, the race for Michigan, ultimately, or at least the race for the sliver of people who's going to decide the Michigan election, is between Jill Stein and Cornel West. And while the numbers are not on either of their side, knowing that the people who are going to decide the election in Michigan are going to break for either Stein or West, then the next step is, okay, not only can Kamala Harris not win Michigan, but that means that on a basic mathematical level, people need to understand that both Cornel West and Jill Stein have a better mathematical chance than Kamala Harris to win Michigan. Now, they probably won't. The fact that Donald Trump is going to win the obnoxious white vote means Donald Trump is probably going to win Michigan. Because a lot of the
Trump's
people
going to win the presidency all the way. He's going to win the presidency.
I think he probably will. I think he probably will.
I can't. The swing states are showing me.
The only reason Biden beat Trump in 2020 was COVID and the George Floyd protests. Either one of those things doesn't happen, and arguably, not only does Trump win re-election, but Republicans still have both Senate seats, or at least one Senate seat in Georgia.
Oh wait, don't forget Dearborn. That
Dearborn
100,000. So Kamala losing Michigan means that Kamala loses the election.
Yeah, no, unless she can somehow manage some better return in some other swing state, which is going to be hard.
Very hard, yeah.
She's not going to win Texas instead of Michigan. So if she's not going to win Michigan, that means she needs to win Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, as opposed to Pennsylvania or Wisconsin. You got to figure she's probably not going to win Florida, even though we're calling Florida a swing state.
Yeah.
You know she's not going to win Texas.
Yeah. Like, not happening.
And
isn't this it's so disappointing, but it's also like it's what they deserve.
Well, they did it to themselves. I mean, all they had to do was, they had it to the point where the uncommitted people were already slavishly surrendering to them, and all they had to do was they had already won, the uncommitted had endorsed them, and all they had to do was let someone who had already endorsed Kamala Harris speak at the convention. And they would have saved a whole lot of trouble instead of uncommitted, unendorsing, and Well, they did do the weak thing of saying we don't want you to vote against Kamala Harris or vote third party, because it's like we still can't endorse Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
And as weak as it was, that hurt them. Rashida Tlaib has not endorsed Kamala Harris. I mean, Rashida Tlaib's endorsement in Michigan would be like a guarantee of the winning the election for Kamala Harris.
When I saw that, I was like, yeah, it's
I
the nail
tweeted
in the
that.
coffin.
I mean, I thought about that the other day when I tweeted it. It's like, if she had sucked up to Rashida Tlaib and Rashida Tlaib was thought well enough of her and thought well enough of her assurances on Palestine to endorse her, that would have been Michigan right there. But she was utterly unwilling to do any of the things necessary to get that endorsement that would have won her the election.
Yep.
And if she can't win with Michigan, she's going to lose the election, I believe.
Yeah,
and
I totally agree.
And I think this is one of the reasons that we can't rely on elections to really ever make positive change and have to look at them from a point of view. How can we disrupt them and show them up for the bullshit they are? Kamala Harris and Donald Trump pretending to disagree with each other is really like classic.
Right.
Because they're the same on border stuff now. They're promising to be tougher on China than each other. They're promising to be tougher on Iran than each other. The only thing where there's really like any daylight between them is Russia, Ukraine, and abortion. People want you to believe that you're standing up for queer people if you vote for Kamala Harris, but when asked about trans rights, Kamala Harris says, "I think we need to follow the law." Like, that's a ringing endorsement of your support for queer people's humanity, Kamala. Thanks.
Yeah, but let's make a bigger deal out of what Jill Stein running mate said compared to what she said. Or I don't get the outrage. And
so
you know what?
I get the outrage. I get the outrage because I have strong feelings about women's sports. I know that sounds weird. But it's like women's sports was founded because men didn't want to let women play.
Right.
I mean, there's this whole story about how women were thrown out of sports. Not, though there was some level of this from some athletes, this was not what hurt them because the best athletes were overwhelmingly accepting of the idea of competing against women. But what really hurt them was this idea that judges in sports like gymnastics and figure skating, where there was some subjective element, they had this absolute paranoia that if they voted for a man, they would be accused of being chauvinist. And if they voted for a woman, they would be accused of sleeping with her. And so in order to protect their own integrity, it was best to ban women from sports.
Patriarchy is so funny.
The judges have just had this. Well, how about you add some women to the judges too, so you don't have to worry about any sorts of accusations like that? They wouldn't have even thought of that.
Yeah,
but no, it's there's this period for about 2 years in figure skating where the best figure skater in the world is a woman. A British amateur named Madge Sires went to the world championships in some place like Helsinki or Stockholm, frozen tundra of the world.
Right.
Competes against the Danes and Swedes and Norwegians who basically run figure skating in Europe at that point. Wins a silver medal, comes in second. The only person who has a higher score than her, the guy who wins the gold medal, is the guy that the jump is named after. Ulrich Salchow.
Oh, wow. I did not know any of this.
So there's a jump. There's a jump they're always talking about in the Olympics, the triple Salchow, which is when somebody goes up and does not a full axel spin. That's a triple axel. But they just come up and do this little mini spin. And that's a Salchow. And Ulrich Salchow invented that. And it was named after him because he was the best figure skater in the world when he invented it. And like inventing it meant he was pretty much the only person who could win any events, because he was the only person who knew how to do that. Madge Syers was able to do his jump as well as he did. She got the silver medal. He got the gold medal. Somebody else got the bronze. The other 12 dudes, because there were 15 people total, the other 12 dudes got nothing. That meant that out of the best 15 figure skaters in the world, number two, out of the best 3 figure skaters in the world, number 2 was a woman instead of one of the best 15 men in the world, which meant that guy who would have been number 2 was number 3, and anybody who would, and somebody completely lost out because she won. And so there were hard feelings with some of the athletes too. But Salchow won, and sort of retrospectively, it might have made things worse because this is what got the judges all in a snit. But Salchow gave Madge Syers his gold medal and said she was the best skater in the tournament. And then the next year, she and her husband won the World Doubles Championships. And she was unable to compete in the World Championships because of an injury. And the year after that, the officials banned women from the World Championships entirely. But she kept winning the British Championship. And the fact that she was the British champion, but wasn't allowed to skate in the World Championships, because the British hadn't banned women yet, you see, because their best skater was a woman. And they wanted to be able to sell tickets off their best skater. So they didn't ban women yet. Ridiculous. And so then you see them. So in order to do something to make the British happy so their best skater can skate, a couple years later, they found a women's championship. But I mean, the only other none of the other women were in her league. There was a reason she was competing among the men. And putting her in her own tournament just for her with other women was basically saying, yeah, we think might actually be too good, and we don't want you over here with us. You're going to distract from the real show. And so that's why I have strong feelings, because women's sports only exist because of male sexism. And the idea that somehow using some argument based in the end on male sexism to keep some women out of women's sports is like totally against the whole idea of the women who wanted to play sports in the first place deserving their right to play with whoever they wanted to play with.
Right. You know, there's an athlete that a friend of mine, Carly, she's been on my show. She's a journalist as well. UFC, not UFC. I don't think she's UFC yet, but trans athlete that competes in the women's. And you know, she won once, and then she lost, and I believe she lost again. Then she was able to win again. You know, but like, people don't pay attention to her losses. They just assume that she's dominating. And when you look at her record, it's like
the Algerian dominating. the young woman from Algeria that they had a moral panic over, who wasn't even trans.
Right, and that was crazy. That shows you how obsessed people are.
The people who are
it's insane.
The people who are transphobic are always going to be saying that certain people aren't really women because they're not female enough for them. And this whole transphobia thing, it's gross because it basically gives a way for women and some men to discriminate against other women
Right.
while pretending that they're trying to discriminate against trans people, but really they're just discriminating against certain kinds of women.
Yeah. They just don't like masculine women. They don't like the fact that women can be masculine.
And they decide what constitutes masculinity in women and no one else.
Yeah, exactly. That part.
It's never their daughter who's too masculine to compete with the other girls.
Right. Yeah. It's just totally stupid, and it's just patriarchal in all different forms of ways. And like,
and you notice,
oh yeah, go ahead.
The people who get nailed the hardest with this, whether they are or aren't trans, are always black or brown and not white athletes.
I was just about to say that too. The race factor is such a big deal too, because you got this woman from Morocco, and this has happened before with African athletes, women being ostracized,
yes,
just because of their features. There was a track runner that went through the similar thing. They saw this little white woman crying, saying, "I never got hit so hard." Why are you in boxing? You aren't in boxing to get hit.
Well, and that's the whole thing. Every woman she fought should be like, she's insulting me. I beat her.
Yeah.
I beat her. What you mean I didn't hit as hard as this other lady? She's doing this to be dramatic and play her I got beat up card in order to make men feel sorry for her. What the fuck is she doing to us, her sister athletes?
Her Irish boxer beat that same boxer you're complaining about the last Olympics that she was in.
Yeah.
You have no excuse. She had no excuse at all whatsoever. But it gaslight all these transphobic, homophobic, all the phobias you can find within the patriarchy.
So the Hungarian athlete who did that. No, I'm sorry. Italian athlete who did that. The first one was Italian. Hungarian was the second one. The Italian boxer who lost and who made a big deal about how hard she got hit. On top of everything else, she was a cop. She fought for a police team. All of whose athletes are paid cops.
Nice.
So
this is why we don't like the police now.
This is someone who's supposed to be a tough macho cop, whining about how some lady from Algeria hit her harder than she had ever been hit before.
She was like, "Oh, I got hit. Oh, wait, I don't have my gun on me. I need to freak out and cry. I need to freak out and cry. Plan B." Can't shoot him.
No. If you have to actually if you're a cop and you actually have to get in a fair fight with a brown person when you're not armed, remember to be transphobic afterwards.
Literally. Oh, we're gonna get in trouble. But it's true though. It's literally true. Like all these things, and to be doing my last comment on the topic, it's like none of you are boxing experts. None of you are any type of sports experts. You are a fan, just like me. You're a consumer of this product.
I will note that by the standards of our liberal media, I am in fact a boxing expert. I wrote for the Ring magazine for right around 8 or 9 months. I had the column on women's boxing. So by the standards of the quote unquote liberal intellectual media, I am an expert on women's boxing in America and internationally, or at least I was in 2011.
Well, you seem to know more than the average person, which is good.
I try to inform myself. I try to help inform other people. I try to help other people learn how to inform themselves. I mean,
right.
I'm hoping people are learning something from our conversation.
Yeah. No, because it's just like every argument they make is not accurate. It's like you need to look at what they are actually doing to prepare to be in these leagues. And then when you see what they're doing and the precautions they are making, you should be able to trust that. But no, you don't want to look You just want to go, well, I believe that all men are genetically stronger than women. Therefore, no one should be in a men's sport that's not biologically whatever. And it's just like, no, you don't know these things. There's literally trans male boxers that are still competing right now, but they don't get ostracized like the trans women boxers do. They don't get ostracized. It's so biased. They just ignored them.
Yeah, nobody made any complaint at all about the trans man who was wrestling for one of the teams and apparently beating the crap out of guys too.
Yeah, totally ignored that. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Well, but that would be the wrong thing to draw attention to, because that would totally undercut all their biological essentialism.
They'll get caught in their BS.
You actually got pissed about that. I mean, shouldn't she have been badly hurt by now, based on your argument, instead of tearing it up and doing really well? Yeah,
exactly. And these people are trained to go on against people that are in their weight class. They're trained to go to fight anyone. They spar like crazy. They spar a lot. These people are trained professionals. They know what they're doing. Just let them be trained professionals. Let them have their career.
There are some differences. There are some physiological differences in learning how to throw a punch if you have boobs. But Butterbean had to work through that too.
See, you know some stuff.
A lot of heavyweights have had to work through the problem of, especially for a while in the 80s, when you look at those guys who were kind of, Tony Tubbs comes to mind.
Yeah.
All those 1980 heavyweights who, these guys managed to throw punches despite their boobs. So,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Clearly it can be done.
Yeah, it exactly. I don't know. I don't actually know what else to say. I just hope that one day we go back to normal, where people stop making this a big deal and so crazed, because it's literally just a trending topic. It's trending, and it's been trending for a while now. No one was this obsessed with trans people.
Well, what it is? Well, you know what that was. That started a few years ago when you heard about those don't say gay laws and complaining about grooming in schools on all these Republican outlets. And it started all at once, and it was all grooming all the time. Just before then, it had been all CRT all the time.
Yeah.
And both the all CRT all the time and the all grooming all the time got Republicans elected governor in Virginia, for instance.
Yeah.
And Democrats, instead of trying to come up with any actual defense of human rights, just end up looking terrible against Republicans all too often.
Yeah. Politicians are not experts. I just need the working class to understand that. Whenever they come out with some statistics or something like that, fact check them. They are not experts.
In fact, politicians are behind the curve. They're old people. The last time they were paying attention, things were really different.
Right. It's just ridiculous, And
Joe Biden probably doesn't even have a fundamental, because it's been so long that he ever had to worry such a thing about himself.
Right.
Joe Biden doesn't have a fundamental idea about what people are paying for rent today. Donald Trump doesn't have a fundamental idea about what people are paying for rent today.
Oh God, no.
The only
we
people
need a cancel culture. Politicians.
The only people in DC who know what people are paying for rent are people who are renting, and they figure, well, if they can afford to pay it, somehow other people can afford to pay it too, because not everybody does what they do.
Yep, going off of their own experiences.
Yeah.
And that's just so biased, because you claim you speak for America, but no, you are part of the problem. She doesn't even have anything on her agenda to help with rent control or anything. Just like the Democratic mayor here in New Haven that promises that he would do better for homeless people. Haven't done nothing for them. But I see a lot of apartments 2,000 to 3,000 and up coming up,
trying to think,
built all over the place.
Trying to think if any mayor anywhere has had a good housing policy since like Burlington, Vermont in the 1980s.
They're saying this guy from Austin is like,
oh
doing
yeah, but I mean,
don't know. I haven't looked into it.
So that's the funny thing is there's always some city that's supposed to be the success story for lowering the rent by building a whole bunch of units. And it always turns out that when you look at the success story, number one, none of the people pushing that city as a success story live there.
Mm-hmm.
And number two,
I found anybody. No,
the rents are actually not nearly as low as the people claiming the rents were lowered a whole bunch claim. And then when you pin them down, what they actually mean by saying the rents are lower is that no, the amount by which they went up was lowered. So that's effectively lowering them because they're not as high as they would be.
Even though it's not affordable still.
Exactly. It's like, well, so you
man.
just want to endlessly build more crap until it magically becomes affordable? How long do you think that's going to take? I don't know, but we should keep building until we find out. Yeah. I believe you work for the housing lobby, sir.
Yeah. No. And, like there are, I have to say that the only thing I've been seeing so far when it comes to the fight for rent control is I gotta give it up to these rappers that actually have tried to invest into their communities and give out rent control. There's certain black boxers that have tried. There's also former Black Panther Party leaders. There's tenant unions that are being established. There's a tenant union here in Hamden, Connecticut that's being established. Those are the real, like, serious examples. And you can't find a politician that did anything similar to that at all. And that just tells you how rigged the system is for, like, that, at least a boxer from the hood can make some money and then go back to his neighborhood and be like, all right, I'm going to buy these units and I'm going to make them all affordable. Like, at least he can do that. What about you? What does that say about you? When they do it in Democrat, that's one thing that makes me. Sometimes
people end up poor again because of all the things they try to do for their community.
Right. And these are things that upsets me about how people focus so much on celebrity than the actual issues that are at hand. We need a cancel culture for politicians. Politicians should be canceled. You motherfuckers are going around signing all these bills that are killing us and killing people overseas, but you expect us to continue to vote for you. But then Doja Cat twerks on stage. Oh my God, the kids. I'm so outraged. It's like people are so like mad about social life. It's
if you're outraged because somebody's kid saw a pop star's ass, then why aren't you outraged because of all the kids getting killed?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just, we need a readjustment on what should be important. All right. We need a readjustment.
I was thinking about this and talking about this the other day because somebody said, rightfully, people are more important than property. And it's true. People are more important than property. But in order for billionaires to exist, somebody has to believe that some people's property is more important than most people.
Yep.
Because think of all the people who are being hurt by the fact that billionaires own so much.
Yep. Why are majority of Jeff Bezos' employees on WIC programs and stuff like that? But he's almost a trillionaire.
Walmart has been singled out for this. The U.S. military has been singled out for this. So many employers have been singled out for their employees being on public benefits of various kinds when they work for, have a so-called good job for a big corporation or the government.
I mean, I work at Yale, a hospital, not Yale University, the hospital.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be known as one of the best hospitals in the goddamn world. They spend billions of dollars. We got a new campus being built right now, but majority of their workers are on food stamps, unless you a nurse, unless you are, unless you went to medical school or something. If you are my position, food server or just a transporter, you know, the positions that keep the hospital running so these nurses and stuff can do their jobs.
Yes.
They're all on food stamps. Everybody's on WIC, everybody's on food stamps. So it's like, where is the money actually going?
And this is a
good job.
This is $1 billion elite hospital that is the pride and joy of an elite Ivy League university.
Right. And their endowment, the Yale, we know how crazy their endowment is one of the largest endowments in the country. They have more money than majority of countries. They can buy countries if they wanted to.
It's true.
There's really no excuse that any of their workers are on any type of WIC or food stamps.
Their employees should be some of the best paid employees in the world. You would think.
Right. Exactly. So it's like we need a cancel culture that goes after these oligarchs and goes after these politicians. All right. Like, don't get me wrong. If somebody is a part of a heinous crime against women and stuff like that, yeah, screw you. Like, you're homophobic, all these things, yes, screw you. But I'm not going to spend my energy saying, oh my God, he needs to be deplatformed and all these things. You know who needs to be deplatformed? That Democrat or that Republican that's been holding office for 20, 30 years, not letting anybody else replace them.
Or those people in the mainstream media or so-called independent media who are getting millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars from billionaires in order to bullshit us and keep us playing one side's game or the other.
Yeah, they need to be canceled too. Literally, they don't want to say they're state media, but they're state media. The state media people need to get canceled too, because you are all liars and you're misguiding the public. I remember the whole bathroom craze thing. People freaking out over the whole bathroom thing.
Yeah,
I'm like, bro, you sound like one of those apartheid people that was freaking out when they saw a black person in the bathroom. Oh, it's not a black person this time. It's a trans person this time. So you think it's okay to freak out when you see a trans person in the bathroom? Oh, you know how many black people were murdered for trying to use the bathroom during Jim Crow era? You are using you're recycling the same hate. And people don't see that. People don't see the hypocrisy in that. And we can't continue to as a society. When anybody is marginalized, that's why we have to.
If you look at it, you're seeing people who still control most of the levers in power in this country, namely white Christians, in a huge moral panic about a tiny percentage of the population with no voting power whatsoever to threaten either political party, which also means there's no way they can actually benefit either political party either, which makes them a convenient target for any sort of attack from either direction.
Right. Yep.
Which is
capitalism.
Yes, that's capitalism. We had the same thing in the 1990s when people were talking about gay rights, and the gay marriage discussion was big, and there's a whole other set of arguments about why gay marriage was less of an issue than gay housing discrimination, and we should have stuck to fighting gay housing discrimination. But
Yeah.
instead there was a decision made to make marriage the issue that would win over and radicalize more yuppie middle class queer people, was the theory. And then they would be aligned with other queer people instead of Republicans. And that didn't end up happening.
Interesting.
How progressive is Pete Buttigieg?
Well, we should ask the black people he was mayor over.
How about the homeless people? What do they have to say?
Right? Just ask them. See what they have to say. You know what I mean? Like,
more and more, that's the opinion of the people I want of every administration now. What do the homeless folks think of them?
Yeah. I mean, there was an encampment here. It didn't make big news. It should have. There's this.
Think about that a moment. New Haven, Connecticut, the home of Yale, big homeless encampment.
Yeah, there was a big homeless
encampment. That should be something you would think would really embarrass people.
Right.
Maybe that's why
came in and just kicked everybody out. The cops came in, beat people up. There was a live stream. They came in, kicked everybody out. And the reason why they did an encampment, because this was a protest, because there was encampments during the COVID. All those encampments have been destroyed. And a lot of people in the community had no problems with those encampments. It was like, well, you're not providing any housing to them. What's wrong with them going in that park over there? That's like literally adjacent from public, because there's trees and all this stuff. So you hardly even see the encampment. Cops went over there, evicted them. It was like, well, you're ruining the sewer system. You know, they try to. Now you care about the environment now.
Well, colleges.
Now.
It's funny that colleges always end up being a way to project police power against oppressed people somewhere.
Right. Oh, God, yes. I almost got tased a few times because of that.
In New York City, Columbia University, where it is located in sort of north central Manhattan. It's on the border between Harlem and the rest of Manhattan.
Yeah.
And so on one side, it's nice neighbor. It's the middle class white yuppies, and on the other neighborhood, it's Harlem. Now, from the 50s to the 70s. From the 50s to the 70s, Columbia evicted about 200,000 people from the Harlem side of the campus in order to demolish their houses for a project to build a gym that was never built because of all the racism scandals that plagued all the various designs when they got leaked to the public with multiple entrances that looked suspiciously like, why do they have one entrance for Harlem and another entrance for Morningside Heights, and it's set up in such a way that they can't get to each other's side of the gym? And then the newspaper started calling it Jim Crow. Gotta love the newspapers.
Yep. I mean, you see a parallel of that as well here in New Haven, where Yale is literally just buying up property and expanding, and they're saying, oh, we're bringing in businesses, but these businesses they bring in, nobody can afford them. Mm-hmm. These are like LL Bean and a Shake Shack, all these places that are high price. No one can afford these places, and they kicked out housing. Black people, literally, the black community is just literally being like ripped apart in New Haven now. There used to be multiple vibrant black communities, but there's only like one or two left. And where they used to be at, you see a lot of housing that's $3,000 a month and up. And we have a mayor here that marched with Black Lives Matter when he was the ACLU lawyer, Justin Alliker. People should look him up and tell him how much of a piece of crap he is. I'm so serious. Fuck that. He literally played this public. Black people and Latin people were tired of Tony Hart, who's been in office for so long, and she was sending cops to Israel. She was such an establishment Democrat. And everybody believed in him. They thought, well, he's an ACLU lawyer. When Stephanie Washington got shot by that cop, he was in the streets with us. He helped organize with us. Everybody thought that he was a good guy. No, he was a wolf in sheep clothing. And this is how the Democrats would do to you people. He's a Democrat too. A wolf in sheep's clothing.
Once you become mayor, you're in a position where police unions can threaten you if you do anything the cops don't like.
Oh yeah. I wonder what they told him.
That's a really good question. I mean, one of the things that happened, both to Chesa Boudin and to Kamala Harris's predecessor, Terrence Hallinan, was that they stopped prosecuting certain kinds of crimes, saying, we're not going to prosecute these people. These people aren't serious criminals. They're not any sort of threat to society. And then cops would like double and triple the normal number of arrests of sex workers or drug users or shoplifters, and then complain about him, and then complain about the district attorney letting them go, saying they're letting criminals go. We wouldn't arrest them if they weren't dangerous criminals. They're making you all unsafe. And then Kamala Harris ran against the guy for the cops and won and totally stopped all that.
Yeah.
But you hear her try to take credit for like getting people into treatment programs. Yeah, getting people into criminalized forced treatment programs.
Right. Dude, she's such a piece of shit.
Brooke Jenkins 1.0.
My shirt keeps choking me. Yeah, I mean, like, and that's what's effed up about this election. You got one orange guy who's just, a loose cannon, and then you got a cop. What do you want? You want the cop who damn well is going to create a police state with her policy. She already said it. She already said she was going to do it.
And I know that I don't want to say it the same way the media is saying it, because the media talks about Donald Trump being a felon in a way that's supposed to inspire a certain reaction. And I don't want to call him a felon. Instead, I want to point out that all his convictions are of the sort that we would consider corrupt racketeering. And so the right way to describe this presidential election is, on the one hand, you got a cop, and on the other hand, you got a mobster.
Yep. Yeah.
And now we have to choose between the corrupt cop and the mobster.
Yeah. And I don't know how much time you have on this show, but I want to make sure that I give my rant about Donald Trump and let people know that Donald Trump is going to be a big problem. The things that he's been saying, how he wants to round up communists and socialist people, that's almost half the country, Donald Trump. And
when he says that, and this is the thing that the liberals should pay more attention to. When he says he wants to round up communists and socialists, remember, this is the guy who calls Joe Biden and Kamala Harris communists. So when he says he wants to round up communists and socialists, he's not talking about actual communists and socialists. He's talking about Democrats.
He has his own definition. He's going to go after the liberals so hard and label them as communists and socialists. Remember last time he was president?
Yes.
The DHS, the Democrats gave him a $50 billion. Isn't this amazing? They call him a traitor of the country, but they gave him $50 billion so he could let the cops do whatever the hell they want. That's so hypocritical, right? Why would you give the traitor, if you're what you call a traitor of the country, a budget to police if you think that his intentions will be facetious? But no, that's how dumb the Democrats think. What did he do? Oh, Portland. He had cops round people up without giving any recognition of who they are, not telling them what they're being arrested for. What happened to those people? A bunch of them were
charged on federal terrorism charges, or were charged under state terrorism charges by the Portland DA, who was supposed to be a progressive DA elected to stop unnecessary prosecutions of people who weren't really threats.
Right.
But who decided, protests are bad. I've got to side with the police on protests.
Yeah. And so he's able to do this. Now imagine what Kamala Harris would do, who is also a cop and also has been saying that she's pro-police state.
She's pro-police state in the first place. She's not somebody who's running to moderate or liberalize or reform the police state. She's someone who's nakedly in favor of the police state as it is, without any real bells and whistles to make it seem more civilized.
People are going to ignore her police state, but they will be fully upset about his police state when all I see is a police state.
Well, so and why are we supposed to trust the person who didn't want to let pot smokers go in California because the state needed their labor? Do we really trust her to legalize pot?
And she's like, yeah, I used to smoke weed too. What?
That doesn't make you better. I mean, when I think of the cops smoking weed and doing drugs and then going out and shooting people for doing drugs, that doesn't make me like the cops more.
She's like, what did Trump do while he was in his first term? He made ICE a force to be reckoned with. Mm-hmm. I remember those days as an on-ground activist where we had to show up to the courthouse just to give support to these people that were in danger. And we also had to force New Haven to become a sanctuary city and find churches for these undocumented workers who have families that live here so they won't be deported.
But notice how all the Democrats who were protesting with you went home when Biden was elected.
Right. And the same thing is still going on. Yeah. And what did Kamala Harris say in her speech about the border? Oh, we're going to strengthen the border. We're going to bring in more patrol. She didn't want to say
she's going to say we're
patrol agents.
Trump let you down and didn't finish the wall. We're going to build it right. Basically.
We're going to finish it. Yeah. When you really look at both of these two and their policies, it's the same. It's just one is a blue version, the other one's a red version.
I was telling everybody that they needed to look really closely at Biden's career in 2020, that he was a bullshit artist who would tell people whatever they wanted to hear, just like Trump.
Right.
That he had been doing this his whole career, lying his ass off. That in 1987, when he dropped out of the presidential election, Connie Chung, who was the evening news anchor on CBS, called Biden a pathological liar in the same language that people use for Trump now. I mean, they have so much in common. They've told so many similar lies about their lives and their families and all this stuff. Trump pretends to be richer and Biden pretends to be poorer, but they're both from about the same sort of upper middle class, new rich family situation.
Yep.
They're both.
I wonder how the Scottish people feel about Trump, just like how the Irish people feels about Biden. I wonder. The real revolutionary Scottish people, how do they feel about Trump? How the real revolutionary Irish people feel about Biden.
Well, I mean, they were both the first people to in their families to go to college, and in both cases, different schools. Trump's dad was part of the New York real estate business and was a big landlord, so he could give a big endowment to the University of Pennsylvania and get Trump in there and into an Ivy League school. Whereas, Joe Biden's dad was a really successful used car dealer who could give his son a Corvette for his 18th birthday and give a big enough endowment to the University of Delaware to get his son in despite his bad grades.
Wow. I didn't know that part.
But he wasn't.
They are so similar.
Yeah, Trump was a bad. Joe Biden was a kid with bad grades in high school who came in near the bottom of his class in law school.
Mm.
That was one of the things he lied about in the 87 election. He said it came in near the top of his class when he came in near the bottom of his class.
I heard that. I heard that. And they also look at their stances on Israel. Biden literally called himself a Zionist. When he was in Israel, he said, "I am a proud Zionist." Trump's like, "Hey, I'm gonna let Bibi do whatever the hell he wants."
And Kamala Harris's husband was on a Zoom call with the Israel lobby saying, "Hey, we're going to let you do whatever you want to. Don't worry about it."
Yep. So I hope people that are listening are seeing these like parallels, because it's literally the same stances. They just say it in different ways. I mean, Hillary Clinton was pro-wall first, but she said she wanted to make a barrier. She didn't use the word wall. She wanted to use the word barrier. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. They hate immigrants just as much as they hate immigrants on the GOP side.
The
They
Clintons
use them as pawns.
The Clintons used the INS shamelessly to try to pander to law and order people. In the end, it didn't do them any good. Democrats lost control of Congress. Clinton only just barely got reelected. Well, not just barely, but
I'm glad you mentioned Congress, because that's the other thing. Do you think this is going to be a red wave? Because apparently we have these red journalists and pundits saying, "Oh, it's going to be a red wave. We're not only going to get Trump in, we're going to be majority in the Senate, majority in the House."
Well, they might hope
going to be a red wave.
I don't know. I think if people elect Trump, I think you're going to see the Republicans lose a few seats in Congress. They may still have control, but I don't think you'll see a big congressional change because it's too gerrymandered for there to be a big change. And the places where you would see a big change, it would break against Republicans. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, you're going to see mostly not very many big changes because of gerrymandering and stuff. Remember when North Carolina, I suppose, North Carolina or Wisconsin could sort of go back to being swing states on a state level, but probably not because they're too gerrymandered. Even though the Republicans have squandered their minorities, they only need to win like 50% of the votes to have like 2/3 control in Wisconsin and North Carolina now.
Wow.
Like 2/3 supermajorities for half the vote, basically.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I don't think there's going to be a red wave neither. I think that they are so excited and thinking that, Trump's going to win. And he might. But don't think that means everybody wants to turn right. There's still a more left-leaning country. People are pro-abortion more here. People are poor.
A lot of people. You're going to see a lot of people who vote for Jill Stein on the top of the ticket vote Democrat down ticket, despite voting for Jill Stein at the top of the ticket. I have to say,
exactly.
They're going to want to see their
and also vote Democrat in Connecticut for the local elections for Gary Winfield and stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, why would I vote Republican? Like they don't understand that no one wants y'all.
Now
local have money. That's why you exist.
Local elections can be the right place to vote for an independent, progressive, or a green. There's a green mayor in Baldwin Park, California, since 2022. No, 2020. Mm-hmm. Sorry, 2020. Mm-hmm. And there is a independent former Green Party city comptroller in Los Angeles, Kenneth Mejia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we ran Peter Gosselin here, who was a Green Party member for district attorney. He got 8,000 votes. He almost made the Democrat William Tong lose.
Yeah.
And the liberals were pissed about that. They was I got cussed out by one of them. It was like, why did you run him? Why the hell would you run him? You stole our votes. I'm like, I ain't steal no votes.
All you had to do to get those votes is run him. Why didn't you run him?
Right there, you run him. He was better than William Tong. That's why he got bad votes compared to the Republican. and she was just so weird. She was like, I'm going to respect the law of the land. I'm like, girl, bye. Ain't nobody going to listen to you. And like, William Tong, actually, immigrant. He's from Chinese immigrants. I met the guy. He's not that bad to me, but I get why he almost lost, because there was a Peter Gosselin in the race. So he disrupted what would have been red and blue votes only. The middle ground was very serious. So that's a success to me. That's a big success to me.
And in the end, I mean, most of these cities with fascist cops terrorizing the populations are blue cities with blue mayors and blue DAs.
That's the part they don't even want to talk about.
London Breed in San Francisco, Democrat.
Right.
The city government here in Portland, Democrat.
George Floyd mayor was Democrat.
Detroit mayor. The city government in Minneapolis, Democrat. The governor of Minneapolis, the governor of Minnesota, Kamala Harris's running mate, taking the congratulations call from Donald Trump because he put the National Guard on protesters in 2020.
Yep. And that's another thing we got to look forward for. Democrats sicking the National Guard on us. They already did it in New York. That's the most recent.
Yep, they did that in New York.
People just gloss over that. People look over it because it's not Trump.
Well, they had that NYPD shooting over the guy jumping supposedly trying to get on the subway for free. Now think about that. That guy getting shot by the NYPD for supposedly trying to ride the subway for free. Well, that only happened because politicians chose to make free rides a policing issue in order to try to sound tough and pander for votes. And now people die because politicians wanted to be tough about the subway.
Yeah, I need to show you a video on Eric Adams when he went to the Breakfast Club. Mm-hmm. Now, the Breakfast Club, I don't know if anybody is a hip hop fan on here, but it's like one of those hip hop radio stations. But they also talk about politics as well, too.
Yep.
He came on the show thinking it was going to be a really good interview. They had a civil rights lawyer waiting for his ass. And she went to work on how much of his police state policies in New York City is harming Black and brown communities. And he was I don't think he was ready for this. It was just a really good autopsy of seeing how this Democratic leader is just like the Republicans. And he felt like he'd get away with it because he's Black. And that's another thing.
Yeah, well, and that's the whole thing. He thought he would get away with it because he's a Black mayor, and because he's a Black mayor, these cultural folks in the Breakfast Club will suck up to him the way the rappers who did press conferences with him sucked up to him.
Yeah, that's probably why he thought it would be good to come on. I bet he's going to come on again.
But then, Jill Stein went on and got ambushed, and
and that's the problem with the Breakfast Club. They got no problem going in on a Democrat, but they also have no problem defending them like they are so.
And it's like, who do you think benefits the most from going after Jill Stein? You think Kamala Harris has more in common with Eric Adams or more in common with some Democrat you like?
Yeah, well, first of all, they both are cops.
Eric
Adams was a cop. So, they probably know each other. All cops know each other eventually. He probably on speed dial on her phone.
Well, my favorite my favorite is, they said that they're always New Yorkers always like to joke that Eric Adams lives in New Jersey. And when Dr. Oz was running for Senate in Pennsylvania, everybody was always saying he lived in New Jersey. What do you want to bet Eric Adams and Dr. Oz are neighbors and throwing big parties together and having lots of Republicans and the right kind of Democrats over?
Oh, yeah. That would be so hilarious.
And that's what George Carlin was talking about before he died when he said it's a big club and you ain't in it.
You ain't. And a lot of people, that's one thing about the Black community that I think people are missing the point when you talked about how a lot of this police brutality is happening in Democratic-led cities. And
plus, London Breed in San Francisco isn't white. Keisha Lance Bottoms in Atlanta wasn't white.
Right.
The lady in DC now isn't white, but they seem to keep doing violent things to the people of their cities using their police.
Yeah. And they wonder why a lot of black people don't trust Democrats now. They wonder why a lot of black people switch back to Republican or something like that. Because we are seeing the contradictories of your policies in our city.
But despite all their complaining about black people switching, what they still have to worry about is the fact that, it's white people who are going to vote Republican on them. And they're whining to try to make excuses in other groups. But the real reason they're trying to sort of strengthen themselves in these other areas and sort of attack their own supporters to get them to come vote for them is because they know that a bunch of white people are going to break back for Trump the way they broke back Republican for Trump away from Obama. Because the Democrats really didn't do any of the things that they promised to do for people who needed help.
Yeah. I mean, why do you think? And Obama knows this.
Yeah.
Why he's trying to make it sound like, oh well, we need to get our black men to support women more. He's going the route that everybody loves to go with Democrats. Is like, oh well, maybe you're being sexist. I'm like, no one's being sexist. Kamala Harris wasn't even popular when she first tried to run it. Tulsi Gabbard obliterated her on the stage. She wasn't even that popular. What was she at? 6%?
I mean, if you want to talk about sexism, you can talk about sexism a lot in terms of the 2020 primary. But there were like 5 women in that race. I exaggerate a little. I believe it was 4. Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, Kamala Harris, and Tulsi Gabbard. That's 4. Only one off 5 women, but there were 4 women in that race. Kamala Harris did worse than both Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren. And the only reason she didn't do worse than Tulsi Gabbard is because Tulsi Gabbard had personally made enemies of the Clintons. Yeah, and so the Clintons were all in on Kamala Harris. Because she was the person who got them most of the same things that Tulsi Gabbard would get them, who wasn't Tulsi Gabbard.
And look at how she's doing the campaign now. And I'm gonna be nice. She probably didn't know that she had to step in. But you go on this hope and moving forward nonsense with not really showing anything different from Biden. Joy. Yeah, and then you got all these rappers coming on, dancing. Everybody's excited. Like, yeah, we're having a good time. We partying. You see how that momentum just died? It's not there no more. So now you notice that you lost the momentum. So what's the next option? You start acting like Hillary Clinton, attacking your candidate instead of trying to show what makes you different.
Pulling in Beyonce to try to whip up celebrity excitement again.
Pulling up Beyonce. No one even watched that Beyonce speech. And I love Beyonce, but I didn't pay attention to that, boo-boo.
Well, lots of people who love Beyonce's music are already a little sour about Beyonce because she kind of likes Israel too.
Yeah.
Beyonce and Taylor Swift are both have feet of clay on this, no matter which you prefer.
Yeah, exactly. So you get a Zionist on stage that's popular, but you see that didn't work. No one shared that. Nobody got excited. Nobody posted. I didn't see anybody.
Beyonce may have hurt her brand more by associating herself with Harris than Harris helped her brand by association with Beyonce.
Yeah, we'll just have to see how that goes.
This is the wrong time to remind people who care about the BDS list right now that you perform in Israel, bae.
And the reason why she's going to lose will be because of Gaza.
Yeah.
They don't want to admit it at all.
And they don't want to do anything about it or to change it. Like I was saying about getting Rashida Tlaib's endorsement. And it would like get them Michigan and solve so many of their problems. And they can't do that. And the reason they can't do that is like the guy who got thrown out of the Kamala Harris rally, despite being one of the biggest donors to the campaign in Wisconsin, but who just happened to be Muslim, said they really do hate Muslims here in this Harris campaign. They threw
and they're
me
kicking them out.
Yeah,
they're kicking them out. They don't let them speak. They didn't give them a speaking platform yet.
and yet and at the same time, people who support Harris want to turn around. Oh, well, Trump will pass a Muslim ban. He'll bring the Muslim ban back.
We already have a Muslim. We already have one again. Like, and the rhetoric that they're telling Arab Americans, oh, if Trump gets in office, it's going to be worse. I have a few Palestinian friends, and two of them told me they have lost hundreds of their family members. Mm-hmm. Their family members are already dead. They're not thinking about Trump. They're not thinking about Trump.
Talk about, well, Trump will just let him destroy the rest of Gaza. Gaza's been destroyed. Have you not seen the aerial pictures? Gaza's been destroyed. Yeah. Gaza does not exist. Gaza is rubble. People are pitching tents in the rubble to try to keep their land claims, and they're bombing their tents.
Yep, they're bombing tents now.
They're not bombing tents because the apartment buildings aren't standing.
Yeah. So this whole saying Trump was going to be worse with Gaza, it already happened. Gaza's gone. It's going to take decades to rebuild that.
They've already spread into Lebanon, where they're now doing ethnic cleansing of Shiite Muslims and Greek Orthodox Christians on the Lebanese-Israeli border. I want to repeat this again. They're deliberately targeting Greek Orthodox Christians and Shiite Muslims for ethnic cleansing on the Lebanon-Israel border. This is part of the same genocide. It is the genocide is expanding. They're doing pogroms in the West Bank. It's not cool.
Yep. And the fact that Biden is allowing all this, there's no excuse. That's not a good excuse for why not, you don't want Trump to win. I don't want Trump to win either. But you can't just sit here and say that a situation that's already awful. Lancet said that almost 200,000 people are dead now. The Lancet medical records said that. Mm-hmm. So it's already bad. You're saying it's going to get worse? What is worse to you?
And it's not like
over there? What is worse to you?
And it's not like Lancet is some sort of radical anti-establishment Doctors Without Borders journal. Lancet is an establishment medical journal that helps sustain, in some cases, anti-vax bullshit, but is unwilling to be dishonest about the death toll of the genocide in the Middle East.
Yep.
Which means, it's probably actually higher even than their numbers, because they're not really anti-establishment.
Yeah, I think it's higher than that too. I do. Just based off of like the personal information I receive from people that I know that have family there, I just think it's like 300,000 at this point.
There's probably something more. The fact that I can't talk about enough is that the Gaza Strip in Israel is about the same size as Greater Metropolitan Hobart, Tasmania in Australia. Hobart, Tasmania has about 250,000 people, including the city and all the suburbs and exurbs that go into that greater metropolitan area.
Right.
In the same amount of space, the Gaza Strip has 2.5 million people.
Yep.
So that's a factor of 1,000 more. Almost 100 more.
Yeah, just about. Yeah. Yep.
And so now imagine you're dropping the equivalent of amount of ordnance, well, more ordnance than was dropped on Hiroshima.
Yep, they outdid Hiroshima.
More ordnance.
That's insane.
More ordnance than was dropped on Hiroshima, dropped on an area the size of greater metropolitan Hobart, but populated by 2.5 million people. I mean, I have a hard time believing that there's not 500, 600,000 people dead by now.
Exactly. I have a very hard time believing that too. It just, the numbers don't number right. It doesn't. They want to keep it at 40,000 and think it's modest. That's the funny part. Oh, it's only 40,000.
40,000 was too many in the first place, and that was the beginning of this year.
Right. Oh, well, they killed 1,200 of us, so we have to kill 40,000. It's just like the argument just doesn't argue. It doesn't argue.
Well, I mean, it makes perfect sense if you think of yourself as an occupying force that needs to rule by terror.
Yeah.
We'll kill so many of you if you kill even one of us, so don't mess with us.
Yeah. And then like the willfully arrogance that they have, where they just assume that these neighboring countries can't fight them. Like it's just mind-boggling. I was like, you guys claim to be, besides America, one of the most smartest technological military forces in the world, and you can't tell how strong your enemy is.
One of the things that they're not telling you is that basically CIA is trying to do a coup in Lebanon to support Israel's invasion.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Well,
regime change.
Hezbollah is doing pretty well against them. It's not
they're trying to do a coup to install an anti-Hezbollah government to help Israel clamp down, and that's really the whole point. But then, if they did that, if you got a pro-Israel government, then you'd see them give a whole bunch of concessions about ethnic cleansing, and you'd see towns abandoned on the border, and it would be bad. So we don't really want that.
And we have phones now, so you can only do so much. We see everything now. You can't hide it. Telegram alone shows everything. You can find it all on Telegram. It's like
they still
have phones.
They still haven't successfully hidden it on Twitter. You can still see that stuff all over.
All over. It's right in the open. So if Harris loses because of Gaza.
Yep.
That's why she loses.
And she knows it, and she's not willing to do what she needs to do to win because of Gaza. So she's going to lose because of Gaza.
And they try so hard to make it sound like a lot of people don't really support Palestinians. The support for Palestinians is literally at the highest it have ever been in history. When you see these Palestinian rallies in America, they keep breaking records. It's going from 2,000 to 100,000 to 400,000.
I mean, in the end, what you've got the Palestinians who are being occupied. This is like, it'd be like if I came to your house and held you at gunpoint and threw you out, and then I lived in your house, and then you came back to complain about me throwing you out of your house. I said, hey, you can build a shack in the backyard, and that's cool with me, and I won't charge you any rent. Are you okay with that?
Yep.
But that's what Israeli peace offers are like. If you're, I'm going to keep living in your house, but you can have a shack in the backyard, and I won't charge you rent for now, though I may raise it later.
Yeah. People don't. If I was Palestinian, I wouldn't want that.
Nobody would accept the kind of thing from Israel that we're expecting Palestinians to accept. It's the sort of thing that Republicans are up in arms about, imagining that the FBI might do this to them.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you want to get a lot closer, you can see something really similar to this happening in the cities to people who don't have power.
Yeah.
And
literally,
we're all there, and the people who are doing this in the cities to people who don't have power are the ones who are saying, we're on the side of marginalized people.
Yep. I mean, look at what happened to Maui.
Mm-hmm.
And look, and what's happening. My parents, they live in Asheville, North Carolina. Look what happened in Asheville. Look what's going on. It's literally just shows you just, they don't care enough. They don't care to give you your to help get your properties back or anything. It's like, once you're displaced, you're displaced. If you don't got money, then screw you, out of luck. We're going to use this land for something else. And I know they'll use it for something else.
My stepson, who's in prison in Virginia, I don't know if they have their running water up and running again after the hurricane.
Oh,
At one point, they were telling people that they had to boil water. But where is someone? If you're in prison, where are you going to get the stuff in your cell to boil water?
Right.
You know how many prisoners are equipped to boil their own water?
Yep. And look at Gaza, in that example of what Gaza, they can't leave. They can't leave. Where are they going to go? They got nowhere to go.
The Israelis control all the ways in or out.
So, and that just and you know what? What we're seeing right now is a reflection of home, and from abroad.
Yep.
And abroad from home. We're seeing that. This is just how this imperialist society is going to be. And I don't know how long they think people are going to continue to deal with this.
They don't think people have a choice. They think that people have learned helplessness to the point where we're not really equipped to fight back, and not enough of us will fight back for it to really hurt them.
Yeah, they feel they want.
They don't think they have to worry about a general strike yet. They still have too much control over the machinery and the leadership of the unions for a general strike to happen, unless liberal union leaders are trying to do it to a Republican.
Yeah, it's the only way, it seems. But then that's not helping, because you're just going to go back to brunch once a Democrat comes back in office.
Well, that's the thing.
You're not going to continue on.
It should not be about elections. It should be about continuing to take action until you are able to affect decision making, even if that means having to make power afraid of you. I mean, what's that V for Vendetta joke? People shouldn't be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
Yeah. I've never watched that movie, and I should watch it.
I recommend the comic book.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I should look at the comic
book. I recommend the comic book. I don't necessarily recommend. I mean, if you want to give the Wachowskis money, that's great. But at the same time, you really have to remember, with any movie property based on the work of Alan Moore, all of the best stuff is gone anyway. V for Vendetta came close, but Alan Moore was talking about anarchism versus fascism and the tendency of fascism to try to take over any existing order, whatever existing order that might be in a time of crisis. And the Alan Moore comic book has a very different ending than the V for Vendetta movie, even though some elements are the same. I don't want to spoil it too much.
Yeah.
People who have already seen a different episode of my show might have already had it spoiled, but if they haven't had it spoiled yet, I don't want to spoil it in this one. But I recommend the comic book over the movie. If you want to see the movie is very good. Hugo Weaving's performance is great. Natalie Portman's performance is great. But, I mean, in the end, Hugo Weaving is a white guy from Africa who decided he'd rather be in New Zealand than Africa. And why can't I remember? Natalie Portman is a Zionist. That's right.
Yeah.
That's the one. Natalie Portman is a Zionist.
Straight up.
So
Straight up Zionist.
So you have to remember that when you consider the greatness of their performance, consider the limitations of the context.
That's important. And, look at Star Wars. Like all these Star Wars was literally inspired by the Viet Congs, stuff like that. But the message, it's not fully there. It's there. There's that sign of showing what revolution could look like, but
you notice the rebels. The rebels are very. I mean, you've got Lando Calrissian and some other exceptions, but the rebels are a very white-looking bunch.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, there aren't a bunch of black Imperials either. They're pretty white too, but the rebels until Mace Windu, you don't ever see a black Jedi.
Yeah.
And there's only a black Jedi because Samuel L. Jackson somebody wanted Samuel L. Jackson at Star Wars. That's the only reason. I mean, it's a tiny bit part. It's a tiny in the first movie. It's a tiny bit part, but that's the only reason there's a black Jedi.
Yeah, and it's not like he's the main character or anything, or it has a very strong, significant role.
No,
I mean, they just know that he that dude.
And people got so pissed. People got so pissed when a clone stormtrooper was one of the good guys, and they had to deal with a non-white hero.
Yeah,
so funny how people get so weird. But yeah, no, in the original, but even in the original, when you think about it, and there are a lot of tropes in Star Wars, but because the droids are droids instead of peasants or black people, you don't necessarily see the tropes the same way you would. There's a Japanese movie on which the first Star Wars movie is heavily based, called The Hidden Fortress. And two of the characters in The Hidden Fortress are these Japanese peasants. And R2 and C-3PO in Star Wars are really clearly based on these Japanese peasants from this movie, The Hidden Fortress. I mean, if you've seen Star Wars and you watch the movie, it's like, wow, this really is R2-D2 and C-3PO. I see all of that. And I see how the samurai general dude is Obi-Wan and the princess is Leia. Now, George Lucas did make up Han Solo and Luke Skywalker. They aren't in that version of the story.
Yeah.
But C-3PO and R2-D2 are, and the way the general and the princess treat them is very in line with, the feudal classism of their era, but also has this sort of sideways, because Kurosawa was a little bit communist. He never stayed communist till in the end, but he was a little bit communist. And he's like, well, look at how these corrupt people keep everyone down in their system too. But it's still not the same. So
no, it's not.
any final thoughts or anything to promote before we wrap up?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm going to be doing if you are in the New Haven area, if anybody, around November 16th, I will be putting on a panel for a big there's a 2-week event of climate change that's happening, and one of the panels that I'll be doing is every single day it's going to be a different conversation about climate change, and the panel I will be constructing on the 16th at 2 p.m. At the Table and Gallery. It's a very fine dining / gallery type of space. It's really nice. We're going to be talking about how war affects climate change, which
I think we have lost Jamarr for a moment. Hopefully he will be back. If not, we'll wrap up in a moment, but I want to give him a chance to come back and finish. Biggest thing I can talk about right now is the show is doing a little better. We're on a stable financial footing for now, but still share the content. We still need patrons. We still want to get as many eyes on the show as possible. So please, if you're watching, hit like, share this somewhere, spread it around. And Jamar's back. Cool. Welcome back.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
It happened.
But yeah, we're gonna just talk about how war is affected by climate change, and
yes,
hopefully Danny Shaw can be there, and also indigenous activist who was also my mentor, Norm Clement. He'll be there, and he's going to be talking about a lot of different good things. So if anybody's in New Haven that area, come on through. And I don't have Pacific days where my new episodes drop, but I do drop new episodes once a week. So just follow Jabari Vok Media on wherever you have social media, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to just follow me on Spotify, whatever, Jabari Vok Media. All those shows are there. I have 3 shows, so they'll all be there. You'll be able to enjoy.
Well, I want to thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I had a great conversation. Love to have you back again. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, everybody, for watching. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Eclectic Radical. You can find the show at The Eclectic Rad. If someone wants to support the show, Patreon, Eclectic Radical, Cash App, Eclectic Radical, PayPal, Eclectic Radical. We've tried to make it real easy for you to find us to pay us if you're so inclined. If you can afford it, please do. If you have to choose between us and mutual aid, go with mutual aid. But if you can afford both, please support independent media. We are completely funded by patrons and one-time donations. There is no billionaire or nonprofit giving me any money on the back end. Completely independent, completely supported by viewers like you. On that note, thank you very much for watching us today, and we will tweet at you. See you next week, folks.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's really my pleasure.